Thank you for yeah, just pivoting quickly to a Zoom meeting. We were on here maybe about 20 minutes ago, all kind of forgetting how this works. So thanks for being flexible. My name's Meg. I'm the education director. Super also thankful for Great Northern for being willing to host us tonight. We are going to reschedule the awareness talk portion of tonight's presentation. It will be next Tuesday, which is, let me just double check the date of that. It is the 16th. So next Tuesday, the 16th at 6 p.m., we will be back at the Northern. We'll do our scheduled awareness talk. But tonight we're going to stick with our state of the snowpack because we have a really interesting snowpack right now and a really interesting weather pattern. So we didn't want to miss that opportunity for Blaze to chat with you about what's going on out there in the mountains. So that's really all we have for you. And I'm going to pass it over to Blaze and he's going to talk with us a little bit about what's going on. So thanks so much, Blaze, for putting this together via Zoom. And yeah, let us know what's going on.
Great. Thanks, Meg. Uh, just checking everything's, can you hear me okay? Okay. I will say that I get more nervous doing these things online than I do in person. Um, it's a little more awkward. So I wanted to um, give a kind of a rundown of the early season snowpack up to this point for so we can see where things are at and then as well kind of what we might expect going forward. Would love, I'm going to run through a lot of things, and if you have questions, I'm not sure how Meg and Claire are handling those. I don't know if it's raise your hand or what, but I'm certainly willing to answer any questions. Some of these graphs are going to be pretty detailed. I'm trying to ask you to get the big picture of them and not pay attention to the details, but I can dive into the details if necessary. All right. And let's see. How am I going to get this to go forward? Um, right here, there's three graphs of the previous three winners, and this is just the precipitation from November 30th to January 12th for the 2021 winner, 2021-22 winner, and 2021. Oops, it should say 21-22. That's a long winter down there. And the vertical bars represent the amount of water that has fallen in a 24-hour period in a day at each of the stations that we record precipitation at. And then the lines, the corresponding colors represent the height of the snowpack. And they go up gradually through the month of December. And I think the big picture here is to look at this and you see a lot of bars. In fact, you see a vertical bar on almost every single day of these three winners during this month of December and early January. But if we look at this past winter, so this is the same time period, we see a bunch of bars on the left side going till about the second week in December, and then just really small stuff for about 3 weeks, kind of a prolonged dry spell, and then the bars pick up again. So we had an unusual dry spell in December. It wasn't completely dry, but this is more of a pattern that we would see midwinter or lately in March in our area. So yes, everybody knows the snow's been a lot less than normal, but this is, and some of it was the way the season started. But what we're particularly concerned about is this 3 week dry spell right here, which is unusual and is going to set us up for some unusual conditions. Uh, looking at colored graphs that I added at the bottom there, those are the snow water equivalent at two of our most important snow tell sites, Noisy Basin on the left and Stall Peak on the right, Swan Range and Whitefish Range respectively. The purple is the maximum. There's a median line in there. It's this pale green one with the X. And then I highlighted the last 4 years as well. And the box shows the same period that I'm showing up above because the year is a lot longer. But you can see in both of these graphs, the black line, the snow water equivalent that's accumulating, kind of flat lines after early December. And it's below average for sure, below median, though it is not. I know it seems dire out there, but it is not as low as it's gotten. So in real life, what did that look like compared to all those colored blocks? And oh man, a lot of reports of people having difficult access getting into the mountains. A lot of normally snow-covered, fully white avalanche paths just deep in old growth alder, even at mid and upper elevations, like the picture of red benchmark peak here in the Whitefish Range. But at the same time, we also in the last month have heard some amazing reports of people finding some great skiing, some unusual conditions. And in general here, folks, if there's a name attached on the image, it's because those people were willing to have their name associated with the image. Some people submitted them anonymously. We had a period where Jewel Basin was just easily skied from the ridge with minimal hazard. We had people getting up into the park and climbing peaks, and then also people braving 1,500 feet of dry trail or shallow snow to get up high in the Flathead Range and get some good skiing. So it wasn't, despite the doom and gloom, it wasn't actually the worst it could be, and people were having a great time in some situations. The avalanche hazard in the same period from November 30th to today, we had some small to large avalanches in early December. We started with high hazard because of a really early season weak layer, which I'm not going to talk about because it's just not really a factor anymore. And then several periods of more small to large avalanches in mid-December, and then kind of continuing pattern of small to large avalanches in the last week. This doesn't include every avalanche that happened. It's just the ones people have recorded. So during that dry spell, that 3-week dry spell that I highlighted, there was generally low hazard with small to large avalanches. But it wasn't no hazard. On December 14th, a skier was caught and carried in a small wind slab. They were unhurt. This was in the Crown Bowl in the Swan Range. Tangled with some snow, got buried a little bit, but they were unhurt. And then on December 23rd, a climber was overrun by a large natural avalanche in the gullies on the northwest face of Mount Brown. The X is my very artistic rendering of where the climber's approximate location. The kind of V is the sort of toe of the debris, the approximate toe of the debris, and the S is probably where it started. That climber was not buried, but they were overrun by substantial debris. They had some minor injuries, and not really sure if that was a loose snow or slide or wind slab or what. But again, no hazard does not equal, or low hazard does not equal no hazard. I'd like to zoom in on the holiday week. This period here in the circle of that 6 or 7 weeks I've been talking about. And starting in a few days before Christmas, we got a little bit of precip. It doesn't really, those bars don't really reflect what happened because they're the snow water equivalent. A lot of the precipitation fell as rain, and the bars would be higher if we recorded them as the rainfall. But we did get a little bit of precip there, a lot of rain, a lot of water, went up to about 7,000 something feet was the melt freeze crust, but we did get some precip. And then we had a few dry days. Interestingly, the temperatures, and I'm kind of, the bottom graph is the temperatures at various stations, and it's a little broader. It only runs from the 19th or 20th of December to the 2nd of January. You can see temperatures were pretty warm, and then they dropped, got pretty cold right around Christmas, and then warmed up again to above freezing. And that period there right after Christmas, the holiday week, is when a lot of people were finding good conditions up high in the park and in the Noisy Basin and the Jewel Basin, partly because we had these inversions, as seen here on the right. A lot of clouds in the valleys held by high pressure, and then really stable, sunny conditions up above, very little wind, and a really nice time to be up high. The picture on the left is former FAC director Eric Peitsch after a field day on December 19th when it started raining, and he is, if you can tell, utterly soaked through his Gore-Tex. And that was the rain event that I was talking about, a lot of that precip on right before Christmas. After that holiday week, we started finally getting snow, and it was remarkably low density. People found great riding conditions. Despite the deep snow, the trail breaking wasn't that hard. We had comments like, "So surprised, one of the top 5 deepest days in the Flathead," and numerous other exclamations of high quality riding. And if we look at those 2 graphs again from Stall Peak, this time Stall Peak's on the left and Noise is on the right. I switched them accidentally. We can see the black line, which is this year's snow water equivalent, taking a sharp climb up. Stall Peak is currently the only SNOTEL site in Montana that's over 90% of its median, and it's probably the only SNOTEL site between here and the Cascades and maybe California that's over 90% of its median. It's a little bit of an anomaly. But yes, we got a lot of snow in the first week of January. The new year also brought some new problems. People started reporting in the last few days, people have reported multiple skier triggered avalanches. On the right is a slide, one of several from the Swan Range. And then on the left is a big 2.5 to 3 foot crown from just outside the boundary of Whitefish Mountain Resort in the avalanche terrain, just outside the boundary there. That was probably failed not yesterday, but the day before. That picture that I used at the beginning and also there is a very cold Cam checking it out today. His eyes are frosted. He looks pretty stiff, but he and Mark went and looked at that. And a lot of what we're seeing in a number of these slides is a layer of, in some cases, surface hoar. In some cases, it's just small rounding facets that's sandwiched, that's above the rain crust, melt freeze crust that formed December 22nd when the rain stopped and temperatures plunged. In this case, in the southern Whitefish Range, is a snow profile I did a couple days ago on Monday. It's sandwiched by a really thin little zipper rain crust that formed freezing rain crust on New Year's Eve, a little early morning on New Year's Eve. That's a perfect structure for an avalanche. A nice slab up above, little crust holding it together, really soft, weak layer sandwiched between that and a very hard bed surface. This is not an actual snow pit on the left. This is model output from a snowpack model that uses weather station data to build an idea of what the snowpack would look like, right up in the summit, near the summit of Big Mountain. Yellow is new snow. The purple is either rounded grains or rounding facets, and the green is melt freeze crust. And we can see the bottom of that snowpack is just rock solid melt freeze crust. That's everything below the December 22nd. And then we see a thin, another melt freeze crust. That's that little rain crust from December 31st. And then over half the snowpack is above there. And that's forming a perfect slab. It's a perfect structure for avalanches to happen. This is the same kind of thing. This one is from Mount Aeneas, and we can see, or modeled snowpack near Mount Aeneas, and we can see there's not as pronounced of a surface hoar or depth hoar layer, facet crust layer, but it is there above the um, uh, above the big melt freeze from mid-December. So there's a little bit of the same thing in the Swan Range, but not quite as much. And that brings us to today. This is weather station's temperature data from about 4 p.m. And the important thing to see here is the light blue, which means temperatures have dropped a lot. There's a lot of negative temperatures there. Snow slip is actually reading minus 32. Most stations are in the minus 20s, but basically temperatures dropped 30 to 40 degrees today in a matter of hours. Dickey Lake was at 29, and at 4 o'clock is at minus 4. Wink Mountain was high of 13 early this morning, and now it's minus 27. So that's a solid 40-degree temperature difference. The other thing that this Arctic has brought in is really strong winds. In most stations, they're blowing from the northeast. This is Tunnel Ridge, and we can see they're actually blowing from the south there because the Arctic is coming from the south down the Middle Fork, and really strong winds, averaging moderate to strong and extreme gusts. And that is drifting a lot of snow. It's not one of these Arctics where the winds are confined to the valley. They are blowing at all elevations and loading atypical aspects. So what's next? Well, the trend is a diminishing avalanche danger. Actually, I'm going to go back one. The trend is diminishing this avalanche danger. We're at considerable at mid and upper elevations today. We expect that to diminish to just upper elevations tomorrow and gradually can diminish after that as the Arctic loses its grip on our area and the snowfall finally stops. But as this slide that Cam and Mark investigated today, you can see the weak layer at the base. That's that December 30, the facets covered on December 31st by that rain crest, and above the hard melt freeze crest from December 22nd. We may have a lingering persistent slab problem, at least in the southern Whitefish Range. We're not sure yet about elsewhere because we haven't been able to check it out. And that's kind of my quick take on the state of the snowpack. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. If I can figure it out. There we go. And if people have questions, I'm more than happy to answer any questions now. And I can bring some of the graphs back up if people want me to. And I think, Claire, you're going to have to run the questions.
Hi, everyone. My name is Claire. I'm going to help out with questions. If you've got, let's see. Okay, Grace, how do you think the cold will affect the snowpack?
I think the primary influence on the snowpack right now is the wind and the way it's drifting the snow around and creating slabs. Those are pretty dense, and it's going to be hard for those to facet. Also, as you can see from where Cam is standing in the last image I showed. Oh, crap. No, in the last image I showed, let me see if I can bring it back up here. The snowpack is pretty deep, and I don't really expect it in a lot of places to be a really strong temperature gradient through at mid and upper elevations. But I'm also going to give a big caveat to that. At low elevations, we have a really shallow snowpack, and we've already seen a number of cut banks and small slabs on steep slopes above the railroad and John F. Stevens Canyon and Highway 2 and logging roads in the west side of the east side of the Swan Range produce some small slab avalanches. I expect that these temperatures are going to wind up, because of that shallow snowpack and really cold temperatures, we're going to have a very strong temperature gradient through that. And I expect it's really going to weaken the snow at low and kind of low mid elevations, basically below about 5,500 feet. Now there's a lot of anchors and bush at that elevation, but that low elevation weakness may be a problem when we get more snow on top of it and on slopes that are fairly open, and at those elevations may have a real persistent slab problem. It's not going to, at higher elevations, like in the southern Whitefish Range where I'm describing this weak layer from December 31st, I don't think it's going to help heal it because slab's not going to settle real fast, and the temperature gradient's not going to be neutral and help that continue to round. So kind of status quo at mid and upper elevations and weakening the snowpack at low elevations.
Awesome. Thanks, Blaze. Okay, next question. Is this possible persistent weak layer less of an issue at elevations that did not receive the Christmas precip?
That's a good question. Let me first make sure I understand that. So the precipitation right before Christmas went pretty high. It was rain, and it soaked all the way through the snowpack and basically turned the lower part of the snowpack into what you might find on a spring morning, a really cold spring morning, just solid. And that isn't going to change anytime soon. Higher, that may be that melt freeze crust from December 22nd is going to be thinner and weaker, and it'll be easier for people to trigger any weak layers below it. There aren't that many weak layers below it. And then that little rain crust I'm talking about seems to mostly be at mid elevations, and it's not clear yet if the dry spell at the after Christmas, the holiday week dry spell, the little short one, produced enough facets and surface wear that survived at upper elevations that the same problem is going to exist up there. We just don't know yet. And with this weather, we're probably not going to get good information anytime soon because no one really wants to go to where it's minus 30 and blowing 30 in the next few days. But yeah, I'd expect a lot of variation. I mean, going back to what I said about the lower elevations weakening, these rain crusts are going to a certain elevation, I would expect a lot of variation in the snowpack depending on elevation in the weeks coming up. So what works at mid elevation, just outside the boundary of Whitefish Mountain Resort and the avalanche terrain there, might not work higher up in the Whitefish Range or in other mountain ranges.
Awesome. Thank you. We've got one more question. Given this information, where y'all skiing?
Tomorrow, nowhere.
Maybe like types of terrain versus specific pieces.
I don't know how reactive or sensitive this persistent weak layer is yet, which, given the amount of snow, I'm just going to be fairly cautious on recent snow. I'm going to be and wind, fairly cautious on any steep slope. Say we didn't have bitter cold temperatures and I was going out tomorrow and it was a normal winter day, I'd be very leery of any hard drifted snow. And then just in general, steep slopes, it would depend on what I found, whether they would be kind of in play or not. I would be doing a lot of digging and poking around and looking for this layer above the hard ice crust from mid-December, first to figure out if it exists and then if it's reactive. And I mean, if we were able to get out, a lot of people were able to get out in the next few days, we'd start to have a better picture of it. But right now, I'm not sure. It's going to be a little while till we have a really good picture of it. So I'd be starting with pretty conservative terrain And then maybe if I'm not seeing signs of instability and not finding that structure when I'm digging, I might step out a little bit. And that's all ignoring the fact that there's big wind slabs out there right now as well. I'll take those into account.
Right on. Any other questions? Any other, curiosities about what's going on right now? All right. Well, in that case, keep checking the avalanche forecast at flatheadavalanche.org. Any other announcements, Blaze?
No. The mountain is closed tomorrow, at least to the lifts are. I don't know what they're doing about uphill traffic. You should check their webpage if you really want to get out in the cold. I don't anticipate we'll be getting out tomorrow, and I'm not sure about the next couple days. It's just not wanting to put people at too much risk with the weather and everything else. But we will continue to be doing forecasts and get as much information as soon as we can.
Beautiful. All right. Well, thank you guys for coming out tonight. Meg, any other ed stuff?
Nope. Just a reminder
Cool.
that we will have the postponed class that was scheduled for tonight at Great Northern will be next Tuesday night, the 16th at 6 p.m. So we'll just continue on as planned. So hope folks stay warm. Blaze, thanks so much for sharing your knowledge with us and letting us know what's going on out there. So yeah,
I have one more
safe.
thing to say for folks. Thanks to everybody. We got a remarkable number of OBS despite the dry period over the last month, and that really helped. And so thank you to everyone who submitted observations, pictures, their ideas on the snowpack while they're out there. I know it was hard won to get to some of those places, and we really appreciated people taking the time to send us some obs at the end of the day. It really helps us out a lot. And as we come out of this Arctic, we're also going to need some more obs. So please continue to do that. So thanks everybody very much.
Thank you. Good night, everyone.